Двергар is a board game in which you will have to lead a clan of dwarves into the infamous Двергар mine. Your task will be to prove yourself during the development of the mine by implementing projects. In this video, you will learn everything you need to start the game, so sit back and listen. Let's start with the preparation of the game. First, unfold the board so that everyone has free access to it. Place the tiles with cards on the board, starting with number 4 and ending on the X symbol. Then prepare your project decks. There are 5 such decks in the game, but not all will be used. You decide which ones you play. If you are just starting your adventure with Двергар, we recommend the card sets marked in the instructions on page 4. Each deck is labeled in the upper left corner of each project card. Each deck has its own special rules that will affect the gameplay. A detailed description of how each deck works can be found at the end of the instructions. Once you've selected your decks, you must separate the basic project cards from the advanced project cards. The basic project differs from the advanced one by the card back. Shuffle the basic projects together and advanced projects separately. Finally, put the advanced project cards in the designated place on the board and the basic project cards on top of them. From the created deck, place the first 5 project cards by placing them on the spaces indicated on the board. The next deck to prepare is the event deck. Draw 9 cards from the pool of 15 event cards and return the rest to the box. Place this event deck face down on the board. Then choose the starting player. I suggest the one with the longest beard. When you do this, give each player a set which consists of the player's board, 8 furnaces placed next to our player's board, then 2 of them are placed on the player's board with the dimmed side up. The heat marker placed on the 0 field of the board, and the foreman. Place the victory marker on the 0 space of the score track on the board. Place all resource markers next to the board. From these resources, each player receives the starting resources that can be found in the table on page 5 of the instructions. The later you start, the better resources you'll get. Put the received resources on your player board. Additionally, resources should be added to the cards marked with the color of the players. The number depends on which player you are in the order. The values and types of resources added to the cards can be found in the table mentioned above. The last stage of preparation is drawing workers. From the pool of 18 pawns, you have to remove 6 random ones. Separate the remaining 12 pawns. Each player receives a random worker and the rest lands on the board. The workers go to the 6 action spaces outside the mine. Place the rest starting from the first space next to the card tiles in the mine. As you can see, depending on the number of players, some of the lowest levels will be empty. Such preparation of the game ensures that each game will be different. That's it, you can play now. The game of Двергар will last for a total of 10 rounds. From the second round, the event cards will apply. Then the game ends and players add points for the special attributes of the project cards to the points scored during the game. Whoever has the most points wins. A round consists of each player's turns. After a player takes his turn, the next player begins his turn. When everyone has taken their turns, another round of the game begins. Let's start explaining the rules with a single player's turn. At the start of his turn, the player must replenish up to 5 project cards if the previous player has played them. The player then performs up to 3 out of the 11 available actions. At the end of his turn, the player always has to move the heat marker on his player board to 0. In addition to the 4 permanent resources in Двергар, there is also one that we lose at the end of our turn, and this is heat. Before we look at the actions we can perform, let me tell you about the general principle. To perform an action, take your worker figure and place it on the board on the action space. Take the replace worker into your pool. The color of the worker determines whether you perform only the basic action or take one of the 2 additional actions. In addition to workers, you also have your foreman. He can only perform a basic action, but if he's replaced by another worker, he always returns to the player he belongs to. Additionally, by performing an action with the foreman, you can move the furnace from your player board to the main board. Then, you pay the price printed on the given field and put your furnace on it. You lose the furnace on your board, but gain 2 points. In addition, each player who uses the action of the space on which your furnace is located will generate 1 heat level for you. The situation is different with furnaces built in such a way in the minefield. These generate additional resources for you during future mining actions at this mine level. With this knowledge, we can look at individual actions. The first group are actions in the mine, which has 4 levels on which you can extract resources. If you add a worker to one of the levels, you put the resources marked on that level into the cart, marked with the color of your clan. Additionally, if you have a built-in furnace on this level, you will get additional resources marked under it. But let us leave the design of the furnaces for later. If there are already any resources in your cart, you cannot add any new ones to it. If you use a foreman for this action, he jumps into the cart with the resources. When the cart with the resources reaches the level of extraction, the resources extracted by the players go to them. If the foreman was there too, he also goes back to the player. Since we are talking about transporting resources, it's time to show you how to put them in motion. That's what we got the lift for. By placing a dwarf there, we raise all carts by 1 level. Additionally, we can raise them by 1 additional level for each heat point spent. As I said, every action outside the mine has its specialist who'll do it better. The iron worker sent to this field will bring an additional point for each level that the carts have left. And the engineer will allow us to add 1 stone to each player's cart on 1 level. We also do it when there are already some resources in the cart. In the workshop, we can build a new coal furnace on our player board by paying 1 iron for it. The engineer on this field will allow us to build a second furnace for 2 stones. The iron worker will light 1 furnace on our player board. In the bellows, we light up one of our furnaces with a basic action. An iron worker who specializes in this will light all the furnaces on our player board, and the blacksmith will raise the heat level on our heat track by 2 levels. Just remember that you have to spend them, otherwise at the end of your turn, the heat will drop to 0 again. The maximum level of heat in the heat track is 10. Since we're already talking about heat, it's worth adding how we can obtain it additionally. We do this by turning 1 hot furnace to the cool side. In this way, we will obtain 1 heat resource. In the alchemist's laboratory field, you can exchange any resource for more of a lower type. You can find the converter above the action space. The blacksmith stand here will allow us to make up to 3 exchanges. The iron worker will light 1 of our furnaces and raise the heat by 1 level. In the furnace, you will smelt 1 type of resources into other, better types. The rate is in the table below the action space. In addition, the engineer sent to this field will increase the level of heat, and the blacksmith will allow us to develop 1 of our undeveloped projects, while increasing the price by 1 heat point. Speaking of projects, it's time to go to the studio of the chief architect. The dwarf sent here will allow us to carry out the project by paying the cost printed on the top of the card. We can also upgrade the project immediately if we have enough resources. We place such projects next to our player's board, the completed ones on the left, the upgraded ones on the right. If we send an engineer to this field, we can recover 1 resource that we have spent, provided we had it before paying the cost, and if it appears in the cost at least twice. The blacksmith sent to this field will allow us to reduce the cost of upgrading the project by 2 heat points. There are points for projects. For upgraded projects, players receive additional points and often additional benefit. A detailed description of each card can be found at the end of the instruction. So much for possible actions. Almost. There's one more, and it is called work break. For this action, you do nothing but retrieve your foreman and one worker of your choice from the board. The condition for taking this action is that you do not have a foreman or any other worker in your pool. This is the end of the action. At the end of your turn, that is after taking the third action, you lower the heat level to 0 and replenish the project field. When all players have taken their turns, the round is over. You reveal an event card and follow its effect. Then you can light one of your furnaces. The condition is to have at least one burning furnace. After moving the round marker, you start the next round and keep playing until there are no more cards in the event deck. Then you add up the points. Some of them are immediately visible on the score field, but you also receive additional points from the project cards. When you do so, the game is over and the player with the most points wins.